first, to start with, I'm very happy to see you all. And thank you very much for getting nearly all the CVs. That is, in a way, the minimum to get a little bit temperature and a little bit information about you. I have to tell that this is for me a huge experiment, because I did in London, in Whitechapel Gallery and some other places, a short presentation, but that was a kind of lecture, which was very, let's say, one-dimensional. Normally, I would meet every one of you during 20 or 30 minutes after having gotten the CV and having a personal talk with you. And then we would sit, well, not anymore the full day, but let's say about 6 hours together with a lot of breaks in between. And this is so, it's an experiment to see what quality we can reach in this compressed kind of meeting. So thank you very much for the invitation, Lola, and I will do my best. Okay, and before we go to a kind of PowerPoint presentation, I would like to give a general introduction, let's say some preliminary remarks on fundamentals. I wouldn't write it down now, because it is a kind of summary of what is going to happen this afternoon. First thing is, take your artistic process as the starting point. Not only this afternoon, but thinking about your redefining your art practice. So take your artistic process as the starting point. Second, question yourself, where do I stand and what do I stand for? To be more precise, where do I stand in the art world and what do I stand for in a wider context of society? Another introductory remark is there are you could say there are about 4 levels of entrepreneurship. One is the vision or goal. The second is the strategy, how to proceed towards that goal. The third is the tactical behavior within that strategic path, like being friendly. And the last one is the operational action, like how to present my work, how to promote my practice, how to price my work. An enterprise without a vision or a goal on the horizon, and without a fundamental choice what kind of strategic route you take, will not survive or be successful. Tips and tricks, recipes about tactical behavior and operational actions alone won't help. They do not contribute to an acceptable functioning of your artist enterprise, your art practice. So only in line with your vision and strategy, you can select and implement your practical tools. And this is a message before we start, because I will concentrate on the vision and the strategy and not on the tools. And the vision, as I said, is congruent, is parallel with your personal artistic view and process. Vision is not something which is someone else is handing to you. It's something which comes from you. And your strategy also comes from you. It has to do with your individual, most personal character. And this could be several things. It has to do, for instance, if someone has a process or a product orientation, running fast to get a result or not, taking a slow cooking. Some need focus, others need non-focus. And this is all characteristic, and it implies those personal things apply, let's say, the kind of road you will walk. This comes back later on in our talk. and like the ability to combine direction and improvisation. Now, I'm referring to the book. I hope some of you had the chance to, let's say, to see it, probably scan it. It's called Plan and Play, and the plan is nothing more than the direction, like a magnetic needle. The play is improvisation, learning from problems and other experiences, having fun, getting energy, like a question was posed, where do I get energy from if I don't have inspiration? It's about experiences, which very important, clarify the direction by permanently testing, is this something I want or is this something I don't want? We'll see this afternoon a broad palette of 11 artist positions, bridging the assumed difference between so-called autonomous art and applied art. And a last preliminary message I skip. Probably if it comes up in the questions, I will treat on it. It has to do with, let's say, is the artist a producer or a salesman? Well, to give the answer, it's a producer and not a salesperson. Anyhow, let's start. Okay, let's try. Several words were already mentioned, like goals, like the personal strategy, the road you take towards your goals, tactics, the day-to-day behavior, and operations getting it done. There are, and this is quite interesting, so I tell it to you. There are several methods of how to make decisions. One is the so-called rational method. It is the belief that if you describe everything which is important, that by doing this, you can make a plan and you are on secure ground. This rationalistic method takes a lot of time, and by the time you have described what your goal is and what the conditions are, everything has changed. So the only thing which doesn't change is, let's say, the organizations, the consultancy, which helps you get a large report on the rational method of trying to understand everything. There's another method, and that is very often artists say, well, this is my way, and that is, I do it step by step, by trial and error, by experience. And that's it. It gives me the freedom to make choices all the time. Well, the problem with this second method is that because you don't know what will happen, the next step, you tend to be a little bit careful not to take too big risk in the next step. So the method leads to being careful in a way, being conservative, avoiding risks. Thank God there is a third method, and that is called mixed scanning. And it is, let's say, at the same time having two kinds of perspective. One is the goal far away, which doesn't have to be very precise described. It's more a feeling, it's more a kind of destination. And the other is the road you walk, the improvisation, all the things you experience on the way to your goal. This helps enormously. Let me give you a metaphor. You stand at the dune landscape, and there you see a lighthouse, so there might be a harbor. There you see a clock tower, there might be a village or a city. The goal is, where do I want to go? Is it the village or is it the harbor? The second question is, how do I come there? If you take the car, you will for sure arrive soon at your goal, but you will not experience the colors of the flowers, the scent of the flowers, the sound of the birds, you will not experience anything on the road towards your goal. If you walk, then you will have the maximum experience. You will even feel with your feet, the tactile ground you're walking on. But the chance is that you don't reach your goal because it takes too much energy. This, you could say, you could have a highly intellectual discussion about product or process orientation. It's one of the things I mentioned. And this has to do with your personal attitude, the balance between, let's say, the process and the aim to come directly to the goal. The tactic is the day-to-day behavior. And to give you a slight idea, if you would say, I'm friendly to my friends and I like to be together and I will inform people, and so I'm a nice person, then it's a tactic. If you would decide, I am not going to approach the art market on my own, but together with friends in a kind of collective, that's a fundamental choice. That's not like being nice one day and the other day not. It's a fundamental choice and you can't change it, let's say, day by day. What goals could we see as an artist? I based this picture, this image on talks. By the way, it's 30 years in the Rex Academy about yearly evaluating students, coaching of artists mid-career and up. And if I listen well, and I summarize it, of course, then I hear the following goals. And the first one is I want to continue working as an artist. And the second one is I want to continue working as an artist. And the third one is I want to continue working as an artist. The fourth one is, yes, I want to continue working as an artist. And then other goals come up. I want to develop my work and myself. I want to exhibit my work and see how it's received. I know where I stand in the art world and in a broader social context. Why this, let's say, not so funny repeating of I want to continue working as an artist, because that is the main pitfall. That is where compromises are made. That is where artists start not to respect themselves as a colleague, as an equal, as someone who has, let's say, their own power. So very often people say, well, the conditions are not so nice, but I can't just continue working as an artist. And this is the theme which comes back through this afternoon. Because we have to concentrate and use our time in a very compressed sense, I move to, let's say, what in the book is about 80 pages, and which is the base of the book. And it is about artist positions. And I have to tell you a little introductory story before we come to this. I think by 94, 95, in the Rijks Academy, I'm talking with then the artists or students at that moment. We came to, let's say, 4 or 5 kinds of positions. And then something happened, which is a very nice story, but not for now, unfortunately. And that is the way that artists from Africa, Asia, and Latin America came in. And not only 1 or 2, but about 1/3 of the whole population in the Rijks Academy. And what then happened was that we experienced and that we talked about a much broader, let's say, definition of being an artist, where there's a much broader, let's say, experience. It is, yeah, well, so, and not only did we, let's say, broaden the perspective, but something happened that, let's say, in the West, in Netherlands, in the West, there were several artists who, when being confronted with these other, let's say, art practices, realized that in the back of their mind, they already had this idea of I'm not only an artist in the studio aiming for, let's say, a kind of classical path through the gallery to a museum, hoping that a curator comes in and says, tomorrow I have booked a flight ticket, first class to New York. I have an exhibition in the MoMA for you. We knew, of course, and much longer if we look in history, the artist in public space, working in let's say, by nobility, by the church, by living in castles, kind of art, some cases, artist residencies avant la lettre. So there were already these kind of positions, but then we heard, let's say, that in many cases, there was not such a division between the artists, let's say, in the classical studio situation, but there the artist also worked as a designer. So I will take you for a moment through those positions shortly. So the artist in the studio take the, let's say, you could say someone making an object. The artist in public space being interested in the social dimension of that object, because it's not anymore placed in an art context. It could be outside of, let's say, of a white cube. The artist in the laboratory, first I thought when I tried to define what's on the left side, are kinds of inner interest. It could be that some of these interests or these fascinations, these facets, are not visible for anyone outside, but for you, you know, but you didn't manifest in it. Let's say, for instance, you might have been walking through the city for years looking at art in public space. You might have books about it, but you never did work as an artist in the position in public space. So on the left side are, let's say, kind of inner orientations, inner interest, facets, and they might become visible, manifest in a position. I move on. The artist in the laboratory, looking for what is, let's say, the inner interest. I first thought, well, it's about art and technology and science. That's the environment. It might be, I think, a kind of interest in a certain analytical way of thinking and working. I would call it process methodology. The artist on stage, it could be someone with a theater background moving to visual art, or it could be someone from visual art through performance arriving in a more theatrical complexity. There, if I'm in a workshop, I make a little dance in the space, telling about all the requirements, for instance, a chair needs. I then say there are, let's say, technical requirements about the material, the production, the requirements of that it should not be too expensive or economic, aesthetic, cultural requirements, enormous loads of complexity. There are artists, and not all, but there are artists who are absolutely challenged and invited by complexity, using, let's say, requirements as something to fight with, to go to the limits or even over the limits, entering into new areas. This is something which has to do just with personal character. The next one is the artist and the writer. There are many combinations of artist and an architect, artist and a musician. I take artist and writer. Yeah, it's based on my observation, and I know many people who are, let's say, active, and it's not writing about art, it's not writing in art. It is, let's say, someone who's working in two domains, let's say, of the visual art and in the literary, in the publishing world. The artist as curator. What is the artist then interested? You know, I had to find these words on the left side, and it's not deep theoretical investigation. It's just the words to try to distinguish between those positions and to distinguish between the inner and interest. The artist as curator, I think it has to do with being interested in connections between work, artwork, and connections between artists. The artist as organizer, creating conditions, knowing how important it is to create conditions for creativity, for developing. Oh, it could be, you know, someone starting an artist platform, artist collective, artist residency, all those possibilities. The artist as advisor. The artist uses their own experience to hand it over to bring it. And that's not only in juries or in examination, external examinator, but it could be advising a municipality on art, or in a fund, or it could be in a company asking, could you lend me your eye, your ear, to observe as an artist mechanisms which are here in this company. The artist as educator, transferring knowledge, ideas, information. Well, there I stumble a little bit, because in a way I think artists are in their own right, in a way, all educator, even if they stand side by side by a work, and even they say, look for yourself to this work, then in a way aiming at asking attention for something they want to transfer. Educator, and it's much broader than only being a teacher. It's in many, many different situations. It could be in the studio. It could be in a cultural center. It could be in a museum. Transferring information, interest to others. Social intervention is the basis of, let's say, the artist as change agent. Those who are interested in that position, I would advise to have a look, and note it now, to have a look if the website, the museum, the Arte Utile, still exists. It's started by Tania Bruguera, living and working in New York and in Havana, if she's free to move. Very often she is quite limited because of political problems. And it is an archive of some 500 examples in history and actualization and actuality about where artists made the difference, where artists intervened, and because of an independent look, because of not minding to be seen as a, let's say, Hofnar, what's a Hofnar in English? Courtier. Anyone help me? What's the name for an Hofnar? Anyone? English. It's at the court, with the bells on, making jokes to the emperor, making remarks.
Joker.
Yeah, joker, that's fine. Not minding to be seen as a joker, who's the only one who can challenge the power. So that's one of the reasons. But then artists all over, and that is, I needed to have a kind of definition in order to answer that. People might say, well, are all those artists, are they still artists? Because I don't see a painting. Well, let me try. I think artists are specialists in observing, in debunking, discovering often hidden meaning, internalizing it, transforming it, and handing it back. If I use that kind of description, definition sounds quite heavy, then all those kind of positions fit in. Now, what I would like you to do is, and I'll introduce it a bit, to make the first drawing. And
Janwillem, maybe before we go to
yes,
that, maybe there haven't been any questions in the chat, but maybe is it an idea to ask if there are any questions related to this?
yes, please.
If there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and address it directly to Janwillem. When there are none, then we will continue.
No?
No, very clear.
No? Okay. Then we move on.
Then we move on. Thank you.
Okay. This drawing. Take a piece of paper. Not now. I'll introduce this. Take a piece of paper. Draw a kind of circle or this kind of egg in the middle. In that middle, you can describe, you can write down the facets. I will go back to the other list of facets and positions. So you can select from that list which of those inner interests apply to you. So mind you, it could be a lot of facets which other people still don't see. So we will go back to that list afterward. That's the first thing. It's within the circle and it's your interest, your inner world. When a facet becomes manifest, and it could be that you have, let's say, the facet of the social dimension of the object, and you, let's say, have done work in public space, all kinds of forms. It could be a sculpture, it could be a performance in the street, it could be a collective action, it could be graffiti. Then make an arrow from social dimension of the object, if that is an inner interest, arrow and write down artist in public space. Then that's the second step. The third step is to write down somewhere on the paper, it's your drawing, and you can do with it what you like. A list of neglected laughs. Well, in fact, there could be people, I realize, but it's not about people. Well, it is about people. It is about things you did and which have been, let's say, pushed aside because of studying program or being, let's say, focused on your practice or doing else. It is like you did dancing very seriously. You sang, you made music, you wrote, and these things, they have been, let's say, neglected for good reasons, but or bad reasons. Anyhow, let's try to remember the things which you found at a certain moment very inspiring and feeding. It has to do also with people who ask, where do I get energy from? That's the third step. And then the fourth one is something which, let's say, quite recently fascinates me. It is what you see left out. It means that in a lot of CVs, people leave out a lot of things, but they also leave out side jobs. Well, it was a very nice article written by Herman Pietz in the Witte Raaf. And he described in a way what, in an artistic sense, in this case, what those side jobs meant for his artistic practice. One example he gave, at a certain moment, carrying, let's say, parts of theatrical, big parts for in the theater, scenography part. He worked before, he worked with smaller objects, thinking of, let's say, eternity. And then he realized that after having worked there, he got a broader sense of scale and of size. He got a more nuance on, let's say, on temporary, that I can pronounce in English, on temporality, tijdelijkheid, that's one example. But if you look well into it, there is a whole list of things which I would like to give to you, because we will be and are in a situation where side jobs are, to my opinion, a very substantial part of the art practice. First, it delivers money. And money, then it helps you to continue working as an artist. So it contributes to a sustainable art practice. It is, in a way, a very high level economic strategy to think in that way and have another source of income. So it's an income component contributing to a sustainable practice. In social sense, it's offering complementary energy and input versus being alone in the studio. 2 days among other people helps being better alone. In an artistic sense, being outside of the studio, being, let's say, in a restaurant working, it gives you a free mind, not being judged permanently with art circle parameters. And it gives you the possibility to reflect from outside on the work and work process in a very, let's say, subconscious way. Side jobs could help enter into another world of values, codes, and behavior. Some artists talk about being connected to, let's say, to communities and to the society. And there they are, around the corner, working together with other locals in a side job. It could also be a place where people from different cultures as expats are. So I mention these things to realize that there are so many components which play a role in this picture, which is a picture, in fact, about your artistic practice in a very integrated, let's say, rather holistic form. So I repeat, in the middle, the facets. When they become manifest, which could also be that before you do a project in public space, but you seriously work on a proposal, then you could also say, I'm going towards this position of being an artist in public space. The neglected laughs, the dancing, the singing, and other writing, etc. And left out those side job, 1 or 2 or 3, what you really meant in the sense we've just been talking about it, something which is something near to your heart and to your mind. I go back to the picture. Okay, make the drawing, please. Give it space. If you have the drawing now on your paper, I will then go back. I'll wait a minute till I see that you have made the drawing. And if you have questions, please ask me about the drawing, and then I'll go back to the facets and positions. Well, this must not be too difficult. Can I go back to the list? Okay, so on the left side, make a choice on object orientation, social dimension of the object, process methodology. Think performatively, complexity, image and word, connectedness, creating conditions, experience, assistance, transference, social intervention. And write down in the circle which of these interest you, which are, well, facets. And then, if you do so, when it manifests itself, like we said, you're already doing it or are really on the verge of being active in that position, write down an error, and then write down studio, public space, laboratory, stage, designer, writer, curator, organizer, advisor, educator, change agent. I'll give you some time to make this drawing. You're absolutely free. For instance, some people start to connect these kind of facets because they think they belong together. Cluster them. Okay, I'm here for a question.
Can I ask you a question? Okay. I'm not really.
I can't hear you. Can you? I can't hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. I'm not really sure about the difference between the advisor and the educator. Could you maybe explain that?
Yes.
Yes.
First, general remark. On several, I describe them also in the book, just enough that you can see the difference. I don't treat them deeply. But if you ask for the difference between the advisor and the educator, and as I said, in a way, I think all artists are educators, but that's here it's more, let's say, in an official sense. The advisor is contributing his eye, or his or her eye, his ability to discover hidden meaning and hand it, in fact, to those who ask for an advice. It could be a company, it could be an art school asking for an external examiner. So it is a bit more, let's say, I will think about it, how to describe it, but the advisor, of course, he's transferring knowledge, but he does it because it is asked to do, it's rather specific. It is a quite defined question. Could you help me understand my company? Could you help me judge these graduating students? Could you help me? So it's very much helping with your expertise, with your own look. The educator is transferring, and of course that happens in all those other situations as well, but it's more in an educational way, however broad it is. It can be as a teacher, it can be as a museum educator, and there it is the exchange between the artist, let's say, sending information, but also getting it, and another party is, in this case, let's say, a student or someone in visiting a museum. So there is more the interaction between the two, because it's not a one-dimensional process. So in the one case, it is a question, more directed question, very often in a field where you would not expect the artist to be active. And in the transference, it's more, let's say, a balance, an exchange, an educational transferring of knowledge and ideas. I hope it helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it helps.
Okay. More questions? Then, how are you proceeding with your drawings? Now, I would like to see everyone, but I only see some three. Okay, okay. Did you finish your drawings? Well, finish. You can never finish this, you know. It will always go on. There will always be new facets, positions develop. You know, I investigated asking some 35 artists which of those positions play a role in your practice. Is it much, or is it incidental that you do this, or is it often? What is it? And I asked also, and how did it arrive in your practice? How did, because what I experienced then, and that you will read in the book, it's a bit a nasty trick I did. First, I wrote about 11 people in a way, in a kind of anecdotal way. And when you read it and you think, that's an example of one of those positions. These same 11 people come back together with 11 others, and you see that they all have a very broad practice with different positions in it. So that is the question then, how did it arrive? Well, three main reasons for broadening the practice by involving your positions. One is financial. Someone saying, friend, I'm pregnant, I'm teaching, you don't have a degree for teaching, school is accepting that you take over for 2 months from me without a degree, would you like to take it over? It pays. Well, there someone says, well, okay, that's fine, I would like to do it. And then after a few months, the baby is there, and the friend returns in the job, and someone says, well, it's nice to have this money. But then there's already another type of very important broadening. Possibly she was not interested, the person taking over, in the money. It was just a question of a friend. So through friendship, through asking, could you join me? Could you take over? Could you help me with my performance? Not having done it before. Could you help me with this project? Not having worked in public space before. Through that way, people, artists experience other positions and it grows in their practice.
Janwillem, could you maybe go back to the one with the facets and positions?
Yes.
Johannes asked for it. And maybe we take last 2 more minutes for this, and if there are any other questions.
Yes, okay. One remark, which is an additional remark to this list. On the left side, we see the facets. It is the inner world. There is, in a way, no limit in your facets. The only limit is you. If you are able to cope with a lot of interest, or if you like to focus on, let's say, a comprehensible amount of interest. But you're free. There's no limitation from the outside. In the positions, you're free to let it develop. But there comes in something which is important. You can't be active all the time, simultaneously in all these many positions. So it has to do with a choice, priorities, but probably also then a rhythm of sometimes doing this and sometimes doing that. The real limitation is every one of those positions has their own market. That's fantastic, because that means that if you have different positions, you have different markets to be active in. But that's limited. That is the main limitation. You can't be active at the same level in very many markets at the same time, because it asks a lot to be involved and connected in different markets. So facets, you're free. Positions, relatively free. Try to balance them. Markets have priorities. Laura.
Yes, I think time-wise, we should proceed.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
that's good. I mean, and everyone is, of course, welcome to keep on developing these. We will be sending this PowerPoint later on, so you can always go back to it.
Yes. And then I'll do one more part before we have a break. The possibility of a break.
Very good.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is an important part, and it's a nice way of, you should have much more time for it. What I do is when I'm in workshops, I ask the group to split up in couples of 2 persons. Do you remember, Lola? And
Yes.
then I ask, first people start to a little bit shy. I ask, first, can you make a couple with someone that you don't know very well? And then start exchanging 5 minutes from one side, 5 minutes from the other side. Tell about the worst experience you've ever had in cooperating. Well, people start shy, but after about a quarter of an hour, I have to stop them, because it evidently is great fun to tell about these kind of disasters. So that is a very important part, but we have to limit it. It asks so much introduction. I'll give a relatively quick overview. We talked about mixed scanning, about, let's say, plan and play. Let's say the direction on the horizon, which is fundamental, and the improvisation, let's say, on the way, which is in a way secondary. That means that if you are in a situation where you have a conflict, it is nice, it is interesting, it's helpful. To split, is this a fundamental question? Because then there is a lot at stake. They should not try to move me in another direction than I really try to find them. So there, it's time you might have, it might be worth to have a conflict. If it is, let's say, just a kind of experience and it's a drama, then you can think, is this an interesting drama or is it an uninteresting drama? If it's interesting, I'm going to learn from this one. Or, well, it's not fundamental, but why not? So things which are fundamental, which are not, it helps a lot to think, am I going to invest emotions and energy? Then another thing which helps enormously in surviving, in continuing, in, let's say, in fostering your creativity, is creating space for yourself, creating an interface. What I then mention in those workshops is an image of that I would like to give everyone a studio, and then with a glass wall around it. Then people start, glass wall, space for myself. then it's a double glass wall. Double glass is a kind of gas in between. And if you turn the knob of the electricity to the right, the gas is loaded and it turns totally black. So someone from the outside cannot see anything in your studio. If you turn it to the left, then it's totally transparent. People can even be in a very hospitable, generous way, can see even in the back of your studio. They can see even, let's say, a drawing on the wall. If you put it in the middle, the gas gets hazy, misty. And that, of course, is the most interesting one, because someone from the outside sees there is dynamic, there is something happening in the studio, but can't see exactly in detail what it is. So you shade your space. This is something which comes back when you talk about, for instance, applying. There it is, showing some of the dynamic before telling in detail what it is all about. So we could talk about this for days. That's the second element. So priorities in fundamental and non-fundamental, creating space for yourself, where you can also retreat when you are in problematic situations. And then there are what I would call control variants. And to give you, let's say, a quick idea, and that is, there is a situation where you can't change it. If you are invited to go to that gallery because someone passed you at the graduation exam and says, well, it's a great story. I mean, it's quite a fairy tale in a way, but it's an international gallery saying, I would like to probably work with you. Now, if you are the artist as explorer, you try to know as much as possible about that place. And then you can't say, well, if you throw out half of the artist in your gallery, then I will consider the possibility of perhaps walking with you. It is a given situation, and you explore till the point where you know mainly by your intuition, is this a person I want to work with? You can't change it, but you can investigate, you can explore till the point of yes and no. The second is there's a young person, art history student, starting with a new gallery, inviting you not to show work, but to be a partner in the enterprise of the gallery. It's quite equal, it's collegial. But then the point is that in order to cooperate together, you need again the intuition. Do I trust this person? Do I think I can be able? Well, it is really very about looking, smelling, how using all your senses. But there comes something. In order to cooperate, you have to master sufficient of the vocabulary of the other, otherwise you can't communicate with each other. So to get equal for a technician or with or someone else, you have to be able to explain in the words of the other what you find important. And the last situation is, it's not only a given situation and not an equal situation, but it's a situation created by you. It's a project, or it's an artist resident, whatever. And there the artist is the director. Again, the director of this project is inviting, it's based on intuition. He or she, the director, needs to know sufficient of the language of those people, let's say, in a film production, the technicians, the sound, the light, enough to be able to communicate what his or her ideas are. And that's the third element. So it is the intuition, it is the vocabulary, but the last is what is the vision, what is the idea? Because it could be that someone says, I was invited, I'm participating in a project, and it is quite a person. I mean, the way he or she comes in on the morning, it is unbearable, but the idea is good. So I would like to continue. So there it is, the vision. This, of course, is a little bit more when you read about it. So this is, I would like to hand you, probably to think a bit about and to consider. And then it might probably be a moment for a short break, Lola. It's about 1 hour from the start now.
Yes, I think that that is maybe a good idea. Toilet, coffee break. It's now 3 o'clock 01. Let's take really 5 minutes. Is that okay? Like a short break and then we keep going? Or would you rather have 10 minutes, Janwillem?
For me, 5 is okay. I can run to the coffee machine,
Nice.
try to get it working, and be back again.
Very good. Okay, you do that and we wait for you and we all go back. Let's say 3:07. Let's take 6 minutes. Is that a good compromise? Okay, we see each other soon. Thank you. Nice, you made it. You made it back. Very good. Janwillem, someone asked about the article you mentioned at the Witte de Raaf.
Yeah.
Is it possible to also access it online or?
I don't know. It has been quite some years ago.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. It was written by Herman Pietz. Herman is double N at the end, and Pietz is P-I-T-Z. And it was, I think, the article was called "Facts" or something from the data room.
Okay, I can try to look it up, and if I find it, I will.
He described, let's say, several moments of experiences and what it later on showed to have contributed.
All right, nice, thank you. Yeah, I will try to look it up, and if I find it, then I can also attach it to the email with the presentation to all the people.
Okay.
All right, yes, I hope everyone is there. Let me check.
I don't see faces anymore.
There are some people that are coming back. I see. We're missing Giovanna, Lisette. All right. Yeah, I would say that we continue.
Are we complete, Lola?
We are missing, well, from the people that I see, Natasha and Lisette. Egon is coming back. That's very good. Oh, Natasha's back. Very good. We're almost complete, but I would say, yeah, they will definitely join any minute. Very good.
So you suggest to start?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
I leave this picture, but I don't have a blank one in between. So it's not about this, what we see now. It's something in between. In some of the questions I got, there were questions about, let's say, asking for advice on several ways for the short term, coming years, and on the longer term. And I would say that if you think about the longer term, you automatically come to where we started with, which was, let's say, this feeling of direction on the horizon, this kind of, which is not that's interesting about it. It's not very detailed, but it's very forceful. And it's a kind of magnetic force if you, let's say, really respect it and feel it. The questions are also, what am I going to do in the next 2 or 3 years? And the next is about, let's say, not the coming few years, it's relatively practical. But before we enter into this practical model, I would like to share with you an experience which I had talking to graduating students in art schools. And it is when I asked, what is your plan for next year? I always ask in the individual talks, where do you come from? Can you tell a bit about the family, school, the neglected loves, etc. How did you arrive here? And then comes automatically, and what is your plan for next year? There it is, a lot of details, but no clarity. There's, I would like to do residencies. Doesn't say much. I'm thinking about a master. So the words are very concrete, but the idea, it's not concrete. It's not, it's very often, I don't know. Some cases it's I'm going to travel a bit and then people don't know, or it's a very well thought travel plan. But then I ask a question, and I ask it now for a moment to you, to think. It's not a drawing. Well, could be a drawing, but that would take a lot of time. It's a kind of architectural exercise in your head. Imagine 5 years from now, you're standing in a space which you could influence, which you could build, which you could obtain. It's a space. Imagine you're standing in that space. What kind of space is this? Are you there alone? Or are you there with others? What are you doing? You alone or with the others? Is it the only space, or is there an adjoining space where you do something else? If you are together with others, are you, let's say, creating the conditions? Are you an organizer? Are you supporting them? Are you caring for the coffee? Or are you one of the team in between? It's these positions, it's these, let's say, cooperation forms. Or are you the director of that group? Funnily enough, this image is very clear. And it is something really to foster and to care for. If you are able, even in a global way, to describe that direction, I think you have something which is most valuable and which gives you the freedom to move, improvising and doing a lot of things and testing and sometimes saying, yes, this learns me, this informs me that I should probably include something in that ideal of 5 years from now. This was an introduction, and it is very important. Now, this is somewhere in between. It is not about tomorrow. It's not about 5 years from now. It is about those 2, 3 years. What would you like to do in the coming years? And this model, it is mapping where do you stand now? What are your ambitions? What kind of priorities do you have? That means just investments of time and energy, money and attention. And it is helping making plans for the future in your artist practice, your mobility, like to artist residencies or other possibilities on research and further study. And here we come again. So please have again the A4 paper at hand, or a bigger one is also possible. And then I'm going to introduce first, before I ask you to make, let's say, to make the drawing. I don't know how it came about, but it must have started in the artist studio. Because what you see here is looking for dimensions and being, let's say, in a metaphorical way, deconstructing the studio. Probably it must have been something like that. I don't know exactly. In the drawing, we're going to make in the middle, and in this case, it's not a big circle. So if you're at a certain moment, it can be as small as just to fit in those letters ST in the middle. It's the studio. You could also say me alone, or something like that. And then you see an arrow to the right, and that is the A. And there's a table. And the A is sharpening the artistic position. You sit at a table together with other artists, and you talk and you exchange. And in that way, in that community, in that exchange, which happens, for instance, in an art school, you discover where you stand and where the other stands. It gives energy, but it sharpens your artistic position. And that, the table, is the first of what I met, of the, in a metaphorical way, of the 4 panels, pieces of wood or something. The second one is the line going down, the T. It is about broadening your technical palette, like from painting going to ceramic, even moving to video, broadening the technical palette, or deepening within ceramic to get more master over the material. And that is the panel is there, the workbench. The line to the left is to the M of the market. It is fastening the professional career in, let's say, in a material sense. It is about the door to the studio, which is open, closed, or half ajar. It is the glass wall, closing it, opening it, or having it half shaded. And the last of the 4 panels is the shelf on the wall. There are books, there's information, there's internet connection, there's your diary, there are memories on that shelf. And it is deepening the conscience and your knowledge about artists in society and your position in that case. So I repeat, these 4 panels, they are just a help to, let's say, think about it. It's the A of artist, the T, the M, and the S. And I will move forward and back and react on your questions because sometimes it's needed. What I'm going to ask is to indicate in several ways. I think we can now make the drawing. So I stop for a moment. Please make on a big piece of paper a big drawing with a small, and not a big one, small ST in the middle. Make it, fill the paper with it, because in this drawing, we will add 2 or 3 other drawings afterwards. If you make it too small, unless you're a specialist in miniature, then it is, then it gets too crowded. So use the paper and have a small circle in the middle, and these arrows to the A, to the T, to the M, and to the S. If you have this, we move to the next. That is that you try to indicate this, try to indicate about now. you would at this moment indicate where do you stand now. Do you have a little or no or a lot of contact, let's say, with your colleague artist? Are you part of an artist community? And so if you have little contact, then you put this ball or whatever side near to you being alone in the studio. If you have a lot of contact with the other artists, you move to the right side because then you have a lot of communication with the other artist at the table. If you work and think and prepare about producing, about the making of the work, if it's, let's say, relatively modest, then it is near to you being alone in the studio. If you spend a lot of time and energy, then you put the ball near to the tee. The market, if you, let's say, I'm not spending much time on trying to relate to the market, then it's near to you in the studio, being alone. Or if you, then you open the door, you go more to the other direction. Same applies for, let's say, your thinking, probably even working, experimenting, reading, going to seminars of community-based projects. If you do a lot of that, then you put the ball near to the S of society. And if it's not so much, you put it more to you being alone in the studio. So try to, and it's not in detail. I mean, it's just, so be a little, you can be a little bit clear. It's not about details. It's about what will come in the next steps. Is there anyone who would like to know more, who has a question, or could you all now put in, let's say, these dots? I don't hear anything, so I go to the next. Now, third step, connect those points which you just have put together. And now the next question. It's just about, let's say, 2-3 years from now. What would you like to do more or less? Would you, if you look from your present situation, would you in the future and in the coming years, Agnes is waiting in the room. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just accepted.
You did, okay. So would you like in the future to have more contact with other artists, form a community or something, or less? Would you like to spend less time on technique or more? Would you like to really enter into the market or not? Would you like to, let's say, be active, develop further in a societal sense, in the artist in society? So if you would indicate what you would like to do more or less is another kind of sign. If you leave it the same, you say, well, that's okay, well, I have, then you put a circle around it, and otherwise indicate what you would like more or less. Then you connect those new dots with a different type of line so that you can see the difference between the line which is representing now and the line which is representing what you would like to move towards in 2 or 3 years, let's say. Very simple and very indicative. For instance, I'll give 2 examples here. On left hand, the artist saying, I didn't do much related to the market, but I would like to find a way to do even less. The technique, I know enough, and I still will, of course, give it attention, but not so much. I would like to do more with artists together and be active in society. The right hand, well, I will of course keep contact with the artist. I'm quite happy with what I'm doing in society, but it should not be more. The technique, I'm not going to give it very much attention, but I really want to put my energy and attention in getting more contact with the market, the art market. If I say the art market, as we have seen, there are some 11 art markets. Anyhow, if you have the left profile, more artists, more in society, less market, and also less technique. I shouldn't advise to go to a residency in New York, which has as its features that everyday collectors, critics, curators pass by to scout talent. Because you're not so interested in the market, and the market is coming to you. The other artists are in a way busy receiving the people from the art market. Society, you have to be in the building, and there's hardly any relationship with the community around the building. So if you have the right profile, then that kind of residency with that kind of aim is fitting. So in a very simple way, well, in the left, well, you could think of going to Jakarta, to Ruang Rupa. That is, if we would have a long program, a very nice story. I can try to summarize it. Artists in the mid-90s, the development was artists from zones of silence, not having, let's say, a voice in the international art world. We explicitly wanted them to open the doors in the Rex Academy, which meant a lot of work, etc. We managed, and there were 1/3 of the artists in the Rex Academy came from Africa, Asia, Latin America. And to make a very quick, very short story. And during the 2 years, and nearly at the end of it, they said, it's incredible. My voice is heard. I get invitations from New York and from all kinds of places. I'm invited for biennials from Busan to New York to Havana to other places. But I want to start in my own country a countervailing power, a platform of artists. And they did a lot of art, some 12 or 13 of those artist platforms in very different forms were started. And they wanted to involve, and they did involve the people they worked with, let's say from the West or the North, to come over, not as their teachers, but to learn from what they developed in Mexico, in Durban, in Jakarta. So their voice was heard. They were reversing the roles to make this story, which I, of course, love, was, let's say, an illustration one step further, because Ruang Rupa, who I just mentioned, as a residency where you might go if you want to, together with other artists in the left profile, to work in society, in street art. This group was about 2 years ago the curators of Sonsbeek and are the curators of the coming Documenta. What about circulation of elites? So this was an intermezzo, but it was about if you have this kind of profile, together with artists being active in society, then a place like the Ruang Rupa in Jakarta is more fitting.
Janwillem,
yes.
Just so you know, we have the last 30 minutes until 4 o'clock. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. Thank
yes.
you.
So, this ambition profile, what are my ambitions for the coming years? It modifies itself. Put it in a drawer in your head, look at it now and then, and adjust it when necessary. It tells a lot of investment in time and energy, money and inspiration. Also into your practice. If you want to sit at the table with other artists and you want them to really have long sessions and you like to cook, have a kitchenette in your studio and a big table. Huh? And if you really like to cook, then have a kitchen. If you find the technique important and you work in ceramics and you don't want to have a small kiln but a bigger one, you can't pay it, probably share studios and create a situation where you have 4 studios together sharing a bigger kiln. So that is in your practice. Further steps, next destination. We gave the example of the artist residence. You can keep it in mind in PhD trajectories when you look for grants and building up networks and sustaining existing ones. If you are in the technique area, then build up a technique network. The artist, it explains itself. It's today and after. Okay. It's a story. I'm sitting in my room in the Rex Academy. I have a glass door. So someone is knocking on the door saying, and I go to the door. And say, as you can see, I'm in a meeting, but I see you have a question. Yes, I have a question. Is it urgent? Yes, it's urgent. Okay. So today, yeah, please, if possible. Then I ask, do you have time? Yeah, but it is a simple question. Then I nearly know enough. It's about money. Because the short question is, I need money, and do you have money for me? 5 o'clock. Artist coming in. And what you see here on one page took on about 2.5 hours. Not now, it will now take some minutes. We go back in the history. This project, when did the first idea come up? Well, about 3 years ago. Okay. Did you think, did it ask for a lot of time? No, no. It came and it went. Okay. When did it get, let's say, more time consuming? Well, about 3 years ago. How much? Well, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, it didn't take much time. So on your paper, you can note first idea development, PM, pro memory. That means in bookkeeping, I can't put a number to it, but I can remember, I should remember. And then 3 years ago, okay, development of the idea, first sketches. Okay, how much? 1 day a week, 50 weeks a year, 400 hours. Let's take 25 euros an hour. That's 10,000 euro. Yeah, nice story. The artist says, yeah, but I did it. Okay. Went on. When did it get more serious? How much time did you spend? Went on and on and on. What did you spend on the production? Yeah, some material. How much? Well, we made a prototype. We made a prototype. Who's we? Friends of mine. How many friends? 2. How many times? How many hours? Okay. Multiply with 20. Yeah, but they are my friends. They did it because of friendship. Yeah. but they did it because they are your friends and you got their support because of you and of your qualities. So, and you decided to ask them to invest it in this project. Research. Yeah, did you buy books, etc.? Yeah, yeah, sure. Oh yeah, and I was for 3 months in a residency in Tokyo. Okay. This was related to this project. Okay, Tokyo, 3 months, travel cost, etc. 18,000 euro. Yeah, but it was paid by the Mondrian Foundation. Yeah, it was paid by the Mondrian Foundation to you because of your qualities. You earned it and you decided to invest it. It was not something which as a secret thing went over your head, just giving you the possibility to continue working. You were the actor in this. Okay. And we went on and on and on and on and on. And we really went sort of into the features of the project because in order to understand. And then we came to the point to, let's say, to re-budget. And we realized that his initial question, which was, I have a project, I need 6,000, I have 2,000, and I need 4,000, was re-budgeted. Because then he said, 6,000, I have to give me 4, please. In the end, it was a project of 72,000 euro, already invested 68,000 in time, in gained support, capitalizing all those things. And then 2 things happen. In a very pragmatic sense, if the artist would go to a sponsor, it's not anymore the question like, I need 6, I have 2, can you give me 4? This is the project I would like to tell you, and if you allow me, your vocabulary, because we were looking to get a bit equal, in your vocabulary, in economic language, I would like to tell you about this project, which is in sense about this, but can I explain? Well, the project is 72,000. I invested 68,000, and I need, in the end, only 4,000 more. I made a mistake. I told this story yesterday to the director of the Rex Academy, and he gave me 1,000 from the experiment budget, so I only need 3,000. The sponsor would say, if you have invested so much yourself in this, and you are able to explain it to me, of course I help you. So that's the pragmatic side of it. But there is an emancipatory element in it. The way you enter the room straight up is something else than saying, please, sir, can you help me? Okay. If I would have individual long talks with you, we would have looked at your CV together. Thank you very much for sending them. Most of them, I would well, I would attack them because they are, in a way, externally oriented to start with. Some have, that's one I got last night, not mentioning names. There, it's also including biographical notes. But what I'm talking about and what I would like to mention is that's probably the word, is that the CV, as we see it very often, it's very much market oriented. It's mentioning exhibitions, first solo, even if the solos are rotten, uninteresting places. And then second group, because group is less than solo. And then leaving away, let's say, commission-like work, teaching, probably leaving it all out or at the end. In a way, it's a very conformist way of, and from the, let's say, from a conforming way to the outside, creating a CV. The CV I'm talking about is the basis for your biographical notes. It's the basis for your documentation of the professional activities you have. It is the basis for your visual archive, for your portfolio. Your new CV, which I would call a PCV, a personal CV, it's a mirror, it's a diary, and it's a personal database. So first steps in this is only aiming at what you like and what you think you would like to put in your diary, what you would like to see when you look in the mirror, and what you would like to keep in your personal database. Let me see what's on the next one. Yeah, we'll try. Sure. Well, let's see what happens. I'll pick out one thing. No, I'm just hesitating because this includes several pictures and steps. And of course, well, one remark, if in a group, two of the CVs look the same, something is wrong. Because it is a personal mirror, personal diary, and a personal database. So they can't look the same. And it's, what we're talking about, it's not a format. It's tools for composing a PCV. What helps is to give it a little bit structure. 4 chapters: the personal, the learning chapter, the connecting or the professional practice, the legacy. I'll explain a little bit, try to. Personal, there you have facts, that's fine. Place of birth, well, it's most CVs I got, it's left away. Date of birth, it's so not always mentioned. Some people think, oh, I'm probably too old. Well, if you leave it away, then instead of thinking someone is 52, because of leaving it away, someone might say this person is 71. So I would not hesitate to put your age. I mean, if it's a young age, you already can be proud looking in the mirror how much you did being 21, because at this stage we're still only looking at ourselves. Lives and works in, contact details, all the things about it, email and Instagram and the whole thing. That's fine, but then you have a list of facts which is well, useful, but on a pile of 10 or even 2,000 of CVs in a situation where there's a selection which is of course mainly based on the visual material in your portfolio, but also this is a document which also then can be used. But for yourself to start with, it would be nice to reflect on the shortest line or lines you could use to profile your personal background. It's the reason that I, even in an indecent curiosity way, ask for background. What is your father doing? What is your mother doing? What is your sister doing? In order to arrive not at a long biographical story, but for instance, in one sentence. I always mention the same sentence. I think it was in Enschede. Someone said, the road from the farm to the art school was long and wobbly. It's not a text like, look me, I'm a very independent person and I'm very good in persevering. Blah, blah, blah. No, it tells in one sentence, I made my choice in a non-artistic background. I persevere on a long road, I overcome problems, and I reach my goal without literary saying this, but to realize the main thing of your personal history. The second, the learning. Well, I think by putting the learning before the professional practice, before exhibitions, etc., and it is like the education you got. But also, if you're not teaching as a main job, but you do sometimes artist talks or give little lectures, then if it's a minor part of your professional practice, you include, let's say, also the given learning to others and the taken learning you include in the learning chapter. And then and you can put there education, of course. Please don't start with only art school as the first study, leaving away in some cases very interesting other schools, starting with being confronted with ICT or video, or even having a study in philosophy finished and leaving it away because it's not art. So make it rather complete and then include residencies, learning moments. Award grants, not as something like, look me. No, it is all learning moments. So you profile yourself as a learning person, and by not starting to put in the exhibitions first, not only market driven. Then the third chapter, it is to cluster activities. We have been looking at artist positions. Try to compose, if you have different positions, 1 or 3, either probably combined positions. You might have, and I don't have to picture here, it might mean to have a line in the middle of your text. On one side, having one type of positions, and on the other side. So it could be work in the studio of working in commissions. It could be working in the studio and teaching. If you put these side by side, you accept that these are part of your practice, but you see something happening because connections start to be, you can feel them. And that is interesting because first you start, for instance, to include the teaching as in a way equal to working in the studio. But then you have an overarching, a kind of trailer, inviting someone else, but also yourself first, what those two mean to each other. The studio, for instance, might be the laboratory for the teaching. The teaching gives me the resonance, the reflection, which I will take with me into my studio. Then you yourself will accept the balance. You will realize what the connection is between the two. And if others read it, they will not think first, oh, this person doesn't know if he or she is a teacher or an artist. No. By putting the understanding, the trailer above it, you profile yourself that you are very conscious. And then you can do anything by putting a line like that. Same applies to, I jumped over the learning, and the same applies to the chapter of learning. If you have, let's say, a kind of learning trajectory which goes always, well, I wouldn't say mention all 7 schools you have been kicked out, exactly with dates, etc. But you might say it was a trajectory passing these kind of things till I found the match in that kind of study. It profiles for yourself and for others that you are, let's say, conscious of what you did. I go back to the professional practice, the composition we mentioned, the balance and balancing them and integrating them. But then there's another thing. Imagine you have 12 exhibitions and one commission in public space. And this is the retrospective situation. But prospective, in the future, you would like to have more commissions in public space. Then you might reduce and summarize a bit of the exhibition part, not too much because it's interesting. It's there. Select the most interesting for you and add information on that one project so that in a visual way and for yourself, it's not only retrospective, but you indicate that in the future that you would like to do more of that by balancing them. Well, the last part is a word, it gets all kinds of words, remains and legacy. It is what is left after you are overrun by a tram. Where is your work and where is information about you? It is work, it's in collections and the bibliography. It's about you. A lot of CVs, and I always have to ask, is it work? Is it a book or publication made by you as the author or the maker, or the artist, or is it about you? If it is done by the artist, then it should be part of, let's say, of the professional practice in some way or not. If it's about you, like articles, reviews, etc., then it's part of bibliography. And the artist statement, you see it's between brackets. If you really want to put an artist statement, you can keep it concise. And I would say, I advise to put it at the end of the CV. It is very personal. It's sometimes slightly hermetic, and it's understandable anyhow for you. But if you put it at the beginning, which sometimes people do, starts with an artist statement, then instead of an inviting, come in to my world, it is a kind of fence of something which is the most essential. But as very often is the case with the most essential things, don't put them too explicit and let people, if necessary, discover about it themselves, which is also about the way of applying in some of these guys. So the facts, complete, informative, be generous. And that means that, for instance, in having exhibitions, and you worked with a curator who, as a person and as a professional, you liked to keep in your heart and your head, put that name in your diary, in your mirror, in your personal CV. And if you hang it, your CV on the inside of your clothing, your cupboard, and look at it daily, then you might think, of course I know that this person was very important for me. But then she was pregnant, and she told me, baby was born, and this was 3 years ago, and I never after contacted her. And so I should contact and say, be clear. I enjoyed very much working with you, and I liked very much to have met you. So I wouldn't mind to do something together in the future, but that's not the reason why I write to you. I feel a little bit ashamed or whatever that your child must be now 3 years old. How are you doing? And if you would be in Amsterdam, I would invite you to come to my house, sit at the table, and I will cook for you. So it's not hiding, not saying I would like to repeat it, but primarily I like the personal contact. So include these kind of things which are part of your personal database. It's generous, and these trailers, which I mentioned, the trailer about the personal, trailer about the learning trajectory, the trailer combining the different parts of professional practice, they are you're reflective for yourself and they're generous for others. Did I plan right, Paula?
It's perfect. You are 6 minutes to 4.
Okay.
And actually, Johannes posted a very interesting question. I would encourage you, Johannes, to address it yourself to Janwillem. I think this might be also very interesting for the others to think about this too.
Thank you, Lola. So I don't see these kinds of CVs on artist websites, also from a bit famous artists like Anouk Kruithof, who has a great website, but she still has a very standard CV. Do you have a good examples of personal CVs to look at or to get inspiration from?
No, this is in a way, this is quite new.
Okay.
But the point is that, let me see how I express it. Sometimes people say, well, people get in schools get advice, and very often it's said, don't include biographical information.
Mm-hmm.
And then my answer to that is, well, at a certain moment, others will start writing about you. So why not start first?
Yes.
And then it is about being emancipated. And then if someone says, I would like to write about you, you can say, well, you're welcome. You can see what I have written in my own diary. Now, if someone is a very famous artist, it already has happened that there is a lot of, let's say, bibliography about that person and leaving it, and it doesn't need needing anymore for the external use. Still, I do this also with people 45, 50 years, etc. And it is revealing, because in that way, very often people of, let's say, 50, or the oldest coaching I had was 71.
Okay.
And the question was very often, I think my practice is stagnating and I should develop a network. What we do is, and it is again like this example I gave with the budgeting, it's a time-consuming, very quiet work of describing the history, the practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we discover that in that story is already 4 or 5 main connections which are valuable and where only sleeping and like Sleeping Beauty have to be kissed awake. So again, even if you would, let's say, compromise in external use, for your own use, it is a fundamental piece of information. But I think if you do it in the right way, what I do myself is I do something because I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look, and if I would use it for others, what should I change? Not leave out. I would not leave out anything. I would not fundamentally change something. But I would say, if I look through the eyes of the other to my story, what rests of the most fundamental for me? So I would compromise and use the external, let's say, use to get it even more strong.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Others, thank you so much also for joining. And we will be sending you also soon the presentation given by Janwillem as well.
Thank you very much for being together with you. And as a last commercial break, I would advise to have a look at it. You can find it in bookshops, museum shops, Bolcom, etc. And okay, great. And I can advise it. It says really, I get such nice personal reactions from people who, and it's selling quite good, but that's not a it's those personal reactions of what it meant and how it can be used, which is important. Okay,
Totally.
thank you very much, and I hope to meet all of you in one or another place, wherever.
Super nice. Well, thank you so much. Janwillem, take your time, and when you're ready, we will begin with the individual sessions.
Yes.